going to talk about email deliverability. This is quite opinionated because, as you know from me, I have a few opinions and I like to share. A lot of this stuff that I'm going to talk about is stuff that we can do for free. This does not cost us anything but a little bit of time to set this stuff up. Does wonders for getting our emails into people's mailboxes, and for making sure that other people cannot pretend to be us. And that's really the big one, is upping our deliverability and our reputation by basically making it harder for somebody to knock our stuff down. So obviously there's a few reasons why our stuff doesn't get delivered. Biggest one, our domain is on the blacklist, on some blacklist somewhere. And it could be for quite a few reasons. I mean, domains have been around long enough that most of them have been bought at one point or another. So a lot of domains have been used before. And did somebody buy it for a bad reason and cause trouble with it and then let it expire and get a new one? I go to an event every so often that the person has bought a list and they just buy a domain and they burn it. And when their domain is completely burned, they just buy a new domain. Please don't do that. Spoofing is another big reason why we can end up on the blacklist. I'm going to show you how to keep your domain from being spoofed tonight. That's a major one that gets us on these naughty lists. But it can be our IP address being on one of these blacklists, primarily for those of us that are using shared hosting. And even if you're not using your shared hosting for your email, if you're just doing email from your website, that can still get your IP address on that naughty list. Obviously, with IPs being at a premium and them being reused, previous owners can also cause some issues with this. This one, though, this bottom one, this one is very easy for us to fix. That domain sending unauthenticated messages. This is super easy to fix if we're using the right email. And I'm gonna talk a lot about this anti-spoofing stuff and the deliverability, but also untrusted messages. I'm going to talk about a few of these as we go. Things that I have seen people send to my inbox. I will protect the guilty and I will not throw out their names. If they're on here, I apologize, but people have some bad email practices. People have some bad email practices. Your domain sending spam. Now, if it's you sending spam, okay, fine. If it's people that just don't like your message and marking it as spam, yeah, it happens. I'm more thinking along the lines of this, of somebody else using your domain to send emails. If you're on what's called an open relay, if you're on HostGator or any other shared hosting of your choice, a lot of their mail servers do not require authentication to send email through them. So at one point there was a major provider that I was able to send email pretending to be Bill Gates at Microsoft.com, and it went through their server without a problem. Unauthenticated emails and unverified senders are a big problem. Shared hosting contributes a lot to a lot of this. Dmarc is a big one that I'm going to talk about tonight. I'm not going to say what Dmarc means right now because we'll have a whole big slide of what it is and how it actually works. But Dmarc is really kind of a big piece that prevents other people from spoofing our domain or sending email as our domain. Does not handle things like the typo squatters, where PayPal with a Cyrillic letter in the middle, Apple with a Cyrillic letter in the middle. That doesn't help because obviously somebody bought a different domain. It's not our domain. We don't control that. So one of the first things we're looking at, obviously, everybody used to say, you've got to have a dedicated IP address to send your email and get it delivered. No, it's really not necessary anymore. Part of the reason that they had that thought was because for SSL certificates, you had to have a dedicated IP. Once they introduced SNI, and we were able to have multiple IPs attached to the same certificate, we no longer needed a dedicated IP address. You can do whatever you want with this IP. It's not a valid IP anymore. Hasn't been in quite a few years. But one of the big things is you do not need a dedicated IP for your standard email delivery. But every domain that you send email from should have these two addresses. These are throwback addresses. These are old pieces that have been around forever. And these are a good test when somebody gets an email from me, and it's a problematic email. What they can do is they can send to one of these addresses, and these are, as they say, either abuse or postmaster, and they're monitored addresses, but they're just kind of a backdoor, like dialing 0 for the operator. This is the operator of the mailbox at the domain. Google Workspace automatically creates these and monitors them for you. Microsoft does not create them. Google, I believe, is the only system that automatically creates them. What I do, if I use Google, is I go in and I create a group and make myself a member using these addresses, because then I get a copy of any emails that are sent to that address, and so does Google. So that if there's a problem, I can take care of it. Yes.
Hey, Eric, just a quick question regarding this. Can you just set these up as aliases as opposed to actual email address?
Now, in Google, you have to create them as groups.
Okay.
Because they're already an actual address. And Google is actually monitoring these for you. So if you go in and you actually set it as a group and then just add yourself as a member.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a little weird because a lot of people don't fully understand the difference between groups and aliases in Google. And if we've got time, I'll spend a couple minutes on it. It's really cool what you can do with groups and aliases in there. Gone are the days of having to have 20 different accounts. You can put 20 domains in a single Google Workspace account. Really kind of cool. So one of the other things that that we start to look at here is if we start to authenticate our emails, because we can obviously, once we get past the idea of are we sending it from a valid location? That's bare minimum that we want to do. We want to send it from reputable companies, Google, Microsoft, Zoho. Pick the reputable company out there. Great. But preferably never use our host for email. Some of us are on hosts that don't even support email, which makes our decision much easier to go to somebody that specializes in email. Google and Microsoft are both using the same servers for their company email as for their client email. So it's in their best interest to keep their stuff clean and off the blacklists. So one of the things that we want to start doing to make our email work better is set up something called SPF, or Sender Policy Framework. It's an open standard. Yahoo actually started, I believe it was Yahoo started this back in the day. But what it is, it's a list of servers that can send email on your behalf. IP addresses, other records, a lot of different things that we can use to start setting it up. Now, here's actually kind of a little demo of what it does. As you're going through, an email gets sent. SPF is a DNS record. So we create that in DNS. When our email gets sent, the recipient server should look at SPF and say, did it come from a server that's been authorized to send email? Here's the problem with SPF. If it fails and we're only using SPF, there's no enforcement behind it in general. It pretty much, if it fails and it gets delivered anyway. Kind of a useless idea, but it is one piece of the puzzle that we want to start looking at. So when we're starting to look at SPF, we've got to start to think about all of the different places that we send from. We've got a website, so we're going to send from our website. We've got our email, we're going to send from our email. Maybe we're doing marketing emails, Mailchimp, ActiveCampaign, whatever that might be. And we'll probably need to add that in. So this is a basic record. I'll break this out. But you notice the include function allows me to include somebody else's record so that Google will always manage Google's record. And I'm just saying, hey, include Google's record. You can put IP address or IPv6. It'll be IP4 : and the address, which can be a subnet. Or it'll be IP4 : and an address, which again can be a subnet.
Eric, would that IP address be for your website?
It can be. So if you're on Cloudflare and your website is hosted at some host that actually provides email, you could actually set it up and say, okay, SPF IP4, my actual IP address, because obviously Cloudflare, we're proxying it, and we couldn't use our A record. We couldn't just call out the A record. So we put in the IP address, and then because we're sending it from our website and Google, we do IP4 include Google.
So because just the A that you have up there right after SPF1 is going to be handling your website IP.
You can use the A record. I rarely, if ever, use that, because most of the time a shared host is not going to send from the A record. They're going to send from their relay server, which is probably either going to be the master IP address for the box that you're on, or it's going to be an actual separate relay server. Mm-hmm. So for instance, HostGator might assign me an IP address of I don't know, 152. Yada yada yada, but they're actually sending the email from a 192.162 address. So that's where I'd add this IP4, and in their case, they've got a range of them, so I end up adding it in as a subnet. So it would look something like this. I do my IP4. Like that, and just add my subnet in whatever range I need to be. It does. This is the part that gets a little confusing, because that IP4, if you've got to actually allow your website to send email, is where we start to include that address. But it could be for another third-party service. I know that there used to be a service out there called zSentry, and they had about 4 IP addresses that you had to add in here. And they were on 4 different subnets, so you didn't want to include the entire range. So we just had to add 4 different IPs and Google so that we could send the email from zSentry. IP4, IP6, include is the one that we use the most. This is absolutely the one that we use the most. And I'm gonna show you why. A standard record for Google is just include Google. Okay, great. Google manages all of that, and we don't have to. But say you're using Google and Mailchimp. Well, now we're going to add 2. Let somebody else manage all of that instead of us having to always know, oh, they've changed their network addresses, their IPs. We need to update all of that. So this include is really, really powerful in what it allows us to do. And if the include does fail, it will continue to process. But on its own, SPF has no teeth. It has no enforcement whatsoever. And this is the piece where I find people really have their stuff implemented wrong. There are a lot of hosts out there that opt for a useless SPF record. As you notice, there are 4 choices. There's the plus, which says, why are we even creating this record? Just ignore it. If it fails, we want you to deliver it anyway. Okay, fine. There are hosts that do that one. The question mark, same thing. Ignore this policy. Just keep moving. Nothing to see here. There are hosts that implement that one. If you're going to implement those, just don't even waste your time with SPF, because it doesn't do you any good. The tilde, the soft fail, is the most common one out there. It is the one that if you're starting to build your solution, that you start with. Because it says, hey, you know what? If it fails, take a liberal view of this and determine, is it really a problem or is it close to a problem? And decide to pass it along or not. As you really start to tighten things down, you can switch over to the minus sign for a full fail. And in most cases, I actually use the minus or full fail. But there are some cases where the tilde is a better choice. And I'm going to show you some setups, and with the notes, there's some files included that'll show you these. And if I'm talking too fast, somebody throw pennies and let me know. This is a standard record for Google by itself. You notice the minus sign or all for a hard fail. For my regular email on a system that does nothing but send email via Google, I can use this record all day long and it will work. All of my emails that are sent via Google will be delivered. That includes calendar notifications. That includes Google Voice notifications. That's anything sent via a Google server with my domain name on it will get delivered with the minus sign. Obviously, here's one if you want to include whoever website welcome is. I think that's HostGator. Or if you want to use Mailchimp, do not actually use this record for Mailchimp. You want to use the soft fail or tilde on Mailchimp because they will never align SPF correctly. It will always fail SPF. But Mailchimp requires that you put their information into the SPF record. If you don't want to send any email from a subdomain or a domain, this record here says nothing. Do not pass go, do not collect 200, and do not deliver any email on this domain. Questions?
Yeah, only one SPF record.
Only one SP. Okay, so yes, officially, only one SPF record per domain. But if you're using subdomains, you can have different SPF records for different subdomains. Remember that for later, because I will talk about subdomains here shortly. So in the case of my standard setup, if I had www created as a subdomain instead of a CNAME, then I would put this SPF nothing record in so that no email comes from www. It only comes from the root. Kind of a handy one when you've got dev sites that you don't want to send email or something like that. or you've started to create, maybe you've got something else that you've had to create A records for some reason for subdomains for a VPN or something like that. Kind of a fringe case for most people. Most people are not going to be using the subdomains with the SPF empty here. So when you look it up, it is a text record, simple, straightforward text record. And what it's going to be is that text record is going to be your subdomain and then this record itself. It will always include the V equals SPF1, and it will always include something all. And then whatever's in the middle will vary depending upon your needs. I've got some links in here that'll show you some builders that will help you build out SPF records. But while it has no teeth, it is something important that we want to use because it has no teeth on its own. It has teeth when we start to combine it with other pieces. DKIM is that digital signature on your email. This is what says the email actually came from who says they sent it. Again, this is free to set up on any good email system should support this. Your limitation is going to be your DNS provider. If you are on certain lower end DNS providers, they do not support the full length of the record. And they don't always support record splitting. If you run into that issue, please get a better DNS provider. If you have a client that is for some reason using Wix for their DNS, tell them that that's a bad idea and get them over to Cloudflare. Even the free plan at Cloudflare will do them wonders. Wix is not the only bad DNS provider out there for those records. There is a hosting company in the Pacific Northwest, you guys area, that does the same thing where they actually don't support the full record length, but they do support record splitting. Okay, so disclaimer out of the way. DKIM is a digital signature. It's done via one DNS record and one record at your host. Your host is going to generate the private key. And then they're going to give you the public key that you paste into DNS. And it's going to look something, it's going to be, let's see. I'm just looking for it. There it is. Okay. So it's going to be in this fashion here, where it's going to be V equals DKIM. Let me wrap that for you. It's going to be V equals DKIM, and then it's going to have the rest of the information in there, and it's going to have a key. This is the record that we'll end up putting in DNS. Some hosts will actually generate this for you as a CNAME record that you can set up that they will automatically rotate these for you. Either option works. For Google, it's a text record. So I always put, when I create my selector, I date stamp my selector so that I know if Google sends me an email tomorrow and says, we now support a larger key and it went into effect on this date, I can go out there and check my record stamp and say, oh, I've already got the longer key because it was created after that date stamp. Or, oh, it's older and I need to rotate it. Now, as a good security professional, I actually do rotate my DKIM keys quarterly. That may be a little more than most people need to do, but I do rotate mine quarterly. So what it is, it's a cryptographic key, and it shows up in your message headers. And then your provider will actually go out, your receiver will go out and check it against your DNS record. I'm going to hop through this portion real quick because this portion is really boring. The two big pieces here, it will always call out your domain name that's sending and the selector that you've chosen. And it will have the, and then it will have the actual signature in there. All the other pieces, it really doesn't make a difference because your email provider will generate the piece you need to paste into DNS. There's a key that would be in DNS. Generally, this is one of those keys that you can set a longer TTL in DNS. It is a text record again, in most cases. There are some that will be CNAME records. Microsoft generates CNAME records, and usually 2 of them. So what happens with DNS, with DKIM, when I send an email to Doug, Doug's server says, hey, we got that email. There is a DKIM signature on this. We're going to go out to DNS and we're going to verify this signature is correct and valid. And then we're going to deliver the email. Now, if it verifies the signature and says it's a bad signature, missing signature, or anything else, it doesn't care. It will deliver it. There is no enforcement behind DKIM. Kind of a problem. But with SPF and DKIM, some of the big guys out there got smart and said, hey, you know what? Why don't we come up with a way to fix this problem? Dmarc. Dmarc ties together SPF and DKIM and determines what to do with our deliveries. If you've been on Gmail long enough, you remember when you used to get a little key next to maybe a FedEx or a PayPal email. That was saying that it had Dmarc on it. What Dmarc stands for doesn't make a difference. Basically, it's saying we're verifying your emails and deciding what to do with it based on rules that you have chosen. This helps and prevents domain spoofing for email. We publish our record. We publish a Dmarc record, which again costs us nothing to publish. It's just a DNS record. And it ties together our different pieces so that we have some enforcement behind that approved sender list, SPF, and that digital signature of DKIM. Here is a fairly standard signature. This is again a text record. And we have some choices here as we go through this of what it's doing. So what it's looking at, you'll notice that there's a percentage option. You can leave that out. If you leave it out, it defaults to 100%. Obviously, for enforcement, you want to enforce it on all of your email, not just some of it. So you can leave percentage out. There is a P policy, which is your full policy for the domain. And there's a subdomain policy, or SP. You can leave out SP and it will just pull your domain policy. ADKIM and ASPF decide how the alignment needs to be. If we ignore it, it's relaxed. If we declare it, the only reason to ever declare it is if you want to set it to strict. Setting it to strict means that they really check the enforcement of that SPF record. That soft fail goes away. It goes to a hard fail. That DKIM, it causes issues with forwarded emails if people forward them incorrectly. But this is the way you want to go, is you want full strict on everything to prevent other people from causing problems with your domain. There's also some reporting functionality built in. When you build out the reporting, You notice it is a mail to address. So it needs to go somewhere. I've got a utility that I use that I like because these reports come in as an XML format and they're not user friendly. I mean, they are not user friendly in the slightest. But there are services out there that are quite affordable that you can actually use to collect these records and monitor your domains, monitor what's going on. I recommend it because as we add new services, as things change, if you're on WP Engine, they used to use Mailgun. They switched over to, I believe it's called Mail Relays, but they didn't tell everybody. So emails started failing from the websites. Okay, I'm going to breathe. I'm going to take some questions for a minute.
Yeah, I got one on Dmarc. So what do you do with these reports? Because I have a Dmarc set up on my one of my email.
I am going to spend several minutes talking about that. I'm going to show you
Okay.
some cool stuff with some Dmarc reports.
All right, because I basically ignore it. I did test my, with the mailtester.com, I think it is. And the Dkim says it's fine. It says it's fine there, but I don't know if that's good enough. Be honest.
Yeah, there. I've got quite a few tools that are really helpful to test things as we implement them.
Okay.
And then I've got a system that I use for capturing my reporting, so that I can go in at a glance and see what's going on. I use this for monitoring client domains as well, because you know how it can get. Oh, we decided we no longer like Mailchimp. We want to use Constant Contact, but we didn't tell you. And now we're getting reports of the emails not being delivered. But if we catch it ahead of them, then they think we're miracle workers. Which is a great place to be when they think, wow, you knew that I had a problem before I knew I had a problem. They're more willing to pay us better.
I have a super basic question.
No stupid questions. I'm okay with all basic questions though.
So like every time I send something from Gmail, like as one of the things that Gmail said I could send it to as like one of my other like domain names, I always get concerned they're going to think that I'm spoofing even though I've already been approved. Do I not need to be concerned about that?
If you're using Google's send as functionality,
yes.
And you are sending it from a domain with Dmarc fully configured, it's just fine. Because what's happening is, let's say you're Google and you're sending as Microsoft. That email is actually coming from Microsoft, not from Google, because of the send as functionality. So it's not a problem.
But I'm not sure if my I did everything Google wanted me to do from my web hosting, but I'm not sure if it was like, does that, if Google accepted it, does it mean that the Dmarc was working?
Not necessarily. Google by default does not explain to you how to set up Dmarc.
Okay.
In most cases, most people that are running a Google Workspace domain may have an SPF record, probably do not have a DKIM record, and almost definitely don't have a Dmarc record. Now, your mileage may vary on that chain, but that's fairly common. Microsoft usually runs the same way. You're going to have an SPF, probably not going to have DKIM, and doubtful that you'll have Dmarc. I'm going to throw out a number here that this number is a little out of date. But a couple of years ago, the RSA conference, RSA is a big security company out there. The RSA conference, of all the vendors out there that were at the RSA conference, less than 30% of them were running Dmarc. And of those that were running Dmarc, it was only about 10% of them that were running it correctly. Dmarc is not something to just jump in and go full enforcement. You've got to think what we're doing before we do it. That's why I'm going to show you a lot of cool tools that'll help you do that.
Okay, thanks.
So what happens with Dmarc? It is again a text record, always preceded the underscore Dmarc. Like SPF and DKIM, you can create it for different subdomains. So if you've got a website and then you've got a dev site, you can have separate Dmarc records, separate DKIM records, separate SPF for that dev site. If you don't create separate SPF and Dmarc, they will just use the root Dmarc policy. Those policies do trickle down. DKIM does not trickle down. This will be helpful in the slides. It really kind of lines out what the different things are. The biggest piece to think about, though, the policy. There are three choices. None, which is the one that you want to start with. It's a report-only policy. It collects the reports, does not block any email delivery. Always start with none. When you find that none is working just fine, roll it into quarantine. Quarantine is the next step up that says if it fails Dmarc, mark it as spam. It still gets delivered, it just gets marked as spam. A lot of people never get past quarantine. They just leave it there as a, well, you know what? Instead of us monitoring reports, instead of us staying on top of stuff, we'll just mark it as spam if it's a problem and people can figure it out. Then there's the reject policy. If it fails Dmarc, do not deliver it. It just, the server, the receiving server says, nope, sorry, we don't want it, and throws it away. And I apologize. I'm going to have a little noise here a second. I'm going to be right back.
That was interesting.
Always on duty.
Sorry about that. That would be the weather alarm saying that we're about to get the storms that we were supposed to get 24 hours ago.
Oh, I thought it was your Dmarc failing.
No, no. That's the weather radio. My phone did it first, then the one behind me did it. So a reject policy, obviously is the place we want to be, but we want to test out first before we get there. There are some other options. We can set options for our reporting and percentages and how often we want the reports to come out and all of that good stuff. If you don't set them, if you just set a basic policy and a reporting destination, the reports will come out every 24 hours, which works fine.
Yeah. Eric,
Yeah.
Question regarding reject on the Dmarc. Does that mean that if it does get rejected, it does not send back to the sender that it was rejected?
Correct.
Okay, so they don't know anything at that point. Okay,
Correct. And that's where this reporting comes in.
got it.
Because if you don't have reporting on and it fails, you've got no idea. So I have reporting on for any domain that I have that sends email. So what happens with Dmarc is it rolls through this nice little pretty picture. Really what it's doing is it goes through and it's checking SPF. Are you allowed to send? No? Okay. SPF does fail on occasion. That's okay. Now, do you have a valid signature? Yes. Oh, it's a valid signature, but not an approved sending location. SPF misalignment still gets passed. It still gets delivered. SPF fails, no DKIM signature or a bad, and it will still get delivered. SPF fails and a bad signature, and it's gone. It's rejected. So it works, and it just kind of goes through and it's looking at these different pieces and determining based on your alignment, your strict alignment, your relaxed alignment, what it decides to do with everything. But it's gathering all of the pieces together and determining should this be delivered? Now,
So this is emails that are delivered by your domain,
yes,
not to your domain.
correct, by your domain. I'm actually going to beat on some worst practices on emails that I've received just in the last 2 weeks. Just because, wow. But Dmarc is all about keeping the reputation of your domain good. We don't want some third world person saying, hey, look at that. That's a short domain. Let's just use that. Try to sell everybody car warranties. Nigerian princes. If you're a Nigerian prince, I'm open to money, but please don't send me an email about it. Sorry. Dmarc is the compliance, the enforcement behind SPF and DKIM.
So Eric, that leads me to kind of a general question that pops up on IP addresses.
Yes.
It used to be that reputation was all about your IP address. And now we have a way of filtering and scoring and reacting to a message. Where do I know IP addresses are part of SPF and part of the what we've just talked about, but where I go to AWS, I fire up a new server and I buy an IP. Does the reputation travel with that IP?
Yes. Yes. The IP does have a reputation. The domain has a reputation.
Right.
Part of the reason why the IP has a reputation is because AWS has a block of addresses, and if other addresses in that block have been problematic, some of the blacklists don't do it by a specific IP; they do it by subnet.
Oh.
So, never buy an IP address from shady servers or us. Only get them from reputable places. AWS, you're not too bad. DigitalOcean, I know a lot of people that actually block DigitalOcean IPs from ever sending emails to them. They actually block DigitalOcean IPs from visiting their websites, because so many of them are, I mean, at $5, how many people spin those up and cause trouble and shut them down? So let me show you how to look at Dmarc. I'm going to assume that most people have a Gmail address of some type. Right here, we've got our triple dots, the vertical triple dots, and on there we have our show original option. That right there is going to pull it up and tell us if SPF passed, if DKIM passed, and if Dmarc was even applied and passed. In the case of this domain, they do not have a Dmarc record, so it's not showing. Now, this is that message header I was talking about earlier. I brought it over here because we can make it a lot bigger and easier to see. All of the information about our delivery is in here. So when we start to see DKIM passed because it came from Topaz Labs. Okay. SPF passed because Topaz says that Mandrill can send email on their behalf. So everything that we want to gather is all based in these message headers, but this is even less confusing than the delivery reports. So Google actually gave us a tool. They gave us a tool that will look at message headers. And I'm going to drop that in the chat window for everybody. They gave us this tool that lets us look at message headers. And this is the header of that email that we were just looking at. And it tells us SPF passed, DKIM came through 2 different domains and passed from both. This is an important piece because when emails get forwarded or sent from other locations, they can start to become problematic and not show things correctly. So it's a neat little tool. I do recommend keeping it handy if somebody tells you, hey, my email wasn't delivered correctly. This is a tool that I do like to use. But this image right here is just a little small to read. So, the signatures obviously keep on going. There's a big section right here that'll say your DKIM signature from Google. If you're sending Google, and your DKIM signature from your actual domain. So this one knows that when this signature was generated, that it was from that domain, and that the selector was this 2016-05-29. Because I always date stamp my signatures. So here's a few suggestions that I recommend that really keeps our email working a lot better. For your primary email domain, use something reputable. Google, Microsoft, pick something that you like. But I recommend a transactional domain. Don't let your website send emails from your primary domain. Use a transactional domain. I'm going to pull up a demo of what I mean by a transactional domain in a second. I'm not saying go out and buy another domain. I'm saying that your domain is too many tabs. Your domain is like mine, Seventh Circle Designs. My transactional domain is a subdomain of my actual domain. So all my email comes out from here. Because transactional emails have a super high open rate, but they also tend to look very spammy because they're password resets, their notifications from forms, their receipts from your e-commerce, their all of that typical noise. But if somebody requests a password reset, they're going to open that. If you get a notification from a form saying, hey, here's a new form somebody filled out, you're going to open that. They have a super high open rate, but they look very spammy. The reason I like to split these apart is because of this next one. Marketing emails tend to have a much lower open rate. And a lot of people tend to mark them as spam if they don't remember signing up, if they don't like the email, variety of reasons. So I always like to split these into separate sending locations. I can then have separate Dmarc records for each one, where my marketing will never have full SPF alignment, but I want it to come out and work correctly. Yet my transactional will always be super locked down. And then it also allows me to work around some of the limitations with SPF. SPF has a limit of 15 DNS lookups. So if you're sending from five different services, Google, Mailchimp, SendGrid, Postmark, and your website, you may blow right past that 15 lookups, and then your SPF record is completely useless. So I really like to split them apart, because if the reputation of my transactional goes down, of my marketing goes down, it doesn't affect my day-to-day correspondence because they're separate. They're treated as separate entities. I'm going to pause for questions on that one.
Yeah. So Eric, you have two subdomains here.
Correct.
So one of them, let's say the transactional you're using is Mailgun, and marketing may be Mailchimp. Is that what you're referencing?
Correct. Mailchimp or ActiveCampaign or
Okay.
whatever. And then I send them out using subdomains.
Right.
Because what I will do is inside of Google, I'll make that a little bit smaller. Inside of Google, I've actually added both of those subdomains into Google. And then I just use these subdomains and attach them to groups, because my transactional emails are not actually coming out from Google necessarily. They might be. But I create groups sometimes as dead boxes that have no member. Sometimes they do have a member. And my transactional, if anybody's ever signed up for one of my newsletters, it's newsletters at my domain. If you reply to that, it actually gets delivered to me, even though it's a Google group for that location. And then I have, in my case, Mailchimp sending email as this address. It seems to work. It seems to keep the reputation higher, but I don't have to buy extra domains. And I'm leveraging Google's 20 domain limit and groups, so that I also don't have to pay for multiple mailboxes.
Of course, your SPF and then DKIM and Dmarc and those subdomains.
Well, and that is a great question, because I have 3 DKIM records, one for each, the root and the 2 subdomains. And I have 3 SPF records. The root obviously is Google only. Marketing is Google and Mailchimp. And in this case, transactional is set to Google. I am personally no longer using Google for transactional email. It does work. If you've got a small enough website, you can use Google's mail relay system, and you can set it up so that you do not have to use passwords and store that, and you don't have to store the passwords on your website. There are ways to do it. And then you can actually have it set up, and you don't have to create the Google Cloud entry to do OAuth, because that's painful.
So I use SendGrid for
SendGrid. I've actually migrated to Postmark.
Yeah.
Because I found SendGrid did not like to deliver to any address owned by AT&T, which meant Prodigy, AT&T, SBC Global, GTE, Pac Bell, pretty much any of them, all were having failures. So I had to switch over to Postmark, because I had one website that half of the users were AT&T type of customers.
Oh, good. Bummer.
It was kind of a headache.
So if I'm using SendGrid, but I'm using my primary domain, you're suggesting that I set up a
Yes.
subdomain and change SendGrid to that subdomain.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been using Mailgun as the transactional email, and they highly recommend using a subdomain, which I've been doing,
Actually, I might be doing that anyway. I think SendGrid asks the same questions.
They might. And then obviously I've got 3 Dmarc records, one for each. Because in the case of my root, I'm doing strict alignment on DKIM and SPF. But on the marketing one, I'm doing relaxed alignment on SPF because of Mailchimp issues. And I'm doing a relaxed alignment on the W subdomain for another reason, for a different reason. So I have separate Dmarc records for each one. I could actually leave out the W, and it would just use the root record.
So if you have more than one domain that's relevant to the same domain, is it just as good to do that, or you prefer subdomains anyway?
I personally recommend subdomains. But as I said at the beginning, this is definitely a very opinionated presentation. I'm sharing opinions about how I do it and why I like to do it this way. I do know a lot of people that will actually have a domain that they use for transactional email across all of their websites. They might have 5 or 6 websites that all share a single transactional subdomain. And that works too. The big piece in my case is I just want to make sure that I split the reputation of marketing off of my standard communications, because if the marketing domain gets dirty, I can change that subdomain from E to something else in the blink of an eye and be on my way and have recovered my reputation. I've never had to do that, but this comes back to that idea. Please don't buy lists for marketing purposes. They're not as clean as they tell you that they are. MTA STS. This is a new one. Mail Transport Authority, strict transport security. If you're familiar with HTTPS, you may have heard of HSTS, which is hypertext strict transport security. It's a list, and what it is it's a way of preloading and saying that this domain will always have an SSL certificate. Well, MTA STS is saying, if you're going to send to us, we want you to send to us and only use a TLS connection. If you can't make a TLS connection to my domain when you're sending an email to me, do not send me an email. Basically, always have an encrypted connection. This is probably the one of the harder ones to set up. Now, it's not overly impossible. You're hosting a single text record. The text record lists out your MX records. The website itself is going to be stored at your domain. It's going to be MTA-STS. Hold on. I'm working way too hard. I've already pulled it up here. Your domain, it's going to be here. It's going to be at your MTA-STS subdomain in the .well-known folder, and it's a text file. But you have to be running HSTS to do this. And once you set up HSTS and you put this record out there, that's all it takes. And then you're ready to serve this up. If you're on Cloudflare, I serve this up using Cloudflare workers, so that I don't have to host this text file somewhere. Cloudflare just serves it up when somebody wants it. And because of the timestamp that I've got on this is in seconds. I believe this is 30 days. This record is looked at so infrequently because Google looks at it and says, oh, enforce it for 30 days. We come back in 30 days and we check it again. Well, how many providers do we have out there? They check it that once every 30 days, and there we go. Quick, easy, simple. I don't think Microsoft supports it yet. Google does. This is a newer system. But it's all about keeping our data secure. So the people sending to us will always have to have an encrypted connection to our mail server to send. Try to say that twice fast. So, Dmarc, one of my favorite websites for doing anything with Dmarc. It's free. It's pretty straightforward. You put in your information, check it, and it's going to pull up your different records and tell you what's going on. There is a surveyor so that it'll break it out and tell you, oh, you know what? We've looked at this and we know that based on this record, you're doing 4 of your 10 DNS queries. Because query number 1 is to pull Google one. Query number 2, 3, and 4 are to pull the things that are included inside of Google's. This is how Google sends us all the information that we need. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. And it tells us, well, we're allowing 328,000 IP addresses just by including Google. Wow. So you start to look at this, because they're using subnets for everything. You start to think how many IP addresses you end up allowing people to send from. This is why SPF on its own was kind of useless. There are tools, though, to create some different things. They've also got a great blog. They've got a great blog. This is really kind of neat to come out here and look at Fortune 100 Dmarc adoption and see how many of the big guys aren't using it or are just have it in report only mode. So only the ones in green are actually doing it correctly. And when you start to look at this and see who's not doing it, you understand why we have such a spam problem. If everybody on this event tonight told all of their clients and all of their friends to implement Dmarc, and then everybody else started doing that, the spam that we get would go down. Because if our domain can't be spoofed, people actually have to go out and buy a domain. These people that are trying to do this, they don't want to spend the money. They want to use somebody else's technology. The more of us that implement Dmarc, the less spam we're going to have in our mailbox. Frightening, huh? We're helping ourselves twice with one thing.
Eric, can you put that link in the chat, that specific link?
Dmarcian?
No, not, yeah, just that one. And also that little graphic that you had there.
Yes. There's Dmarcian.
Yeah.
And then this was the Fortune 100, but their blog has a lot of good information in it.
Okay.
There was, I won't scroll too far through the blog, but there was one top 100 breweries. But they also, I think, had one about banks and things like that. I think we're going to get to a point that if you want cyber insurance, that we're going to start looking at having to use Dmarc. URI ports. This is who I use to monitor my stuff. This is great. The pricing is actually not too bad. Depending upon how much you need to monitor. If you've only got 3 domains, it's $12 a year. Really not bad. I will pull mine up in a minute and I will see if I can demo something. But I really like this service. Securityheaders.com. Scott Helm, that's behind it, is the guy that's also behind security headers, behind URI ports. Everybody has probably seen me pull up Hardened Eyes at one point or another, because security headers is good, but Hardened Eyes, how I like it because it just goes so much deeper of what's going on, what we can look at, because it looks at not just our security headers for strict transport security, content security policies, etc., but it also looks at our TLS certificates, our MTA-STS implementations, TLS reporting. So if you're using MTA-STS, one of the options is reporting on it. So if there's issues with it. So that's another piece that can be used out there. This actually looks at our mail servers and tells us what our mail servers are doing. So it'll tell us IPs, .6, .4, if they support DNSSEC, if they support other things. This tells us if we're using DNSSEC, if we're using Dmarc. If you're not using DNSSEC, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend it. I also recommend CAA records, certificate authorization, authority authorization records. So Hardenize, really like this one. This is probably one of the better systems out there for looking at our records, seeing that things are configured correctly. MX Toolbox, when your email's not getting delivered. MX Toolbox checks your servers for blacklists. It'll tell you if one of your servers is on any of the lists, if one of your MX mail servers is on the list. It'll go through all of it. And it will check all of them. Now, if you're using Google and one of those servers is on the blacklist, you contact Google. Don't try to get it off the list yourself. It's not going to happen. You contact Google and tell them to deal with it. If you're on Microsoft, I'm sorry, I suggest you get onto Google. If you're using a free host for email, I'm sorry, I suggest you get onto Google. If you don't want your email delivered, I'm sorry, I still suggest you get onto Google for email. Again, like I said, I'm opinionated. I find that hosted email from shared hosting of your choice is just terrible. MX Toolbox, all of these services all these websites are free with the exception of URI ports. All of these are free for you to do searches on them, and they'll look at things. They'll tell you if you've got any problems. In my case, it's throwing a few warnings about reverse matches on the SMTP banner because I'm using Google. Not really a problematic thing. And Cloudflare's start of authority, it doesn't like the way they do it. So it's telling me that there's a problem with it. Cloudflare's start of authority is just fine. There is a new service coming out. I'm going to leave this on the screen a minute, talk about a new service. It's called BIMI, B-I-M-I. This one's going to be cool. This is going to be a game changer. If you're running Dmarc, you're going to be able to embed your logos into DNS and get them to show up in people's mailboxes. It's going to be a game changer. There's a few places out there using it. Google is starting to preview it. It does require special certificates, but this will help. This is going to be really kind of a game changer for inboxes of what we start to see in our mailboxes. For those of you that don't know, Gravatar, you associate your email addresses with Gravatar, and on Google accounts, your icon will actually start to show up in people's mailboxes. So in my case, where I've got a handful of aliases, I put my same photo on all my aliases through Gravatar, and then that all shows up in my Google mailbox that way. It's kind of cool. So I did promise I'd talk a few bad practices about actually sending email and content. There are certain things that are prone to raising flags when you're sending content. Too many links, painfully obvious. But I find that a lot of people like to use services like WiseStamp and put all of their social profiles in the footer. Every one of those is a link. The more links you have, the lower your score on your email, and the more likely that it's going to be marked as spam. Too many images in your footer. too many images in the actual message. Prone to getting stuff marked as spam. How many links is too many links? In my opinion, well, in my opinion, again, sorry, here we are with my opinion. I am going to give a demonstration of an email that I received recently, and I will talk through this. It had the person's name. It had their logo, which was a JPEG, 350 kilobyte JPEG. Stupid. It then said email and had their address, which was a linked address. Then it said email, and it had their AOL address, which was a linked address. Then it said email, and it had their Gmail address, again a linked address, not that kind of Gmail. I can't talk and type at the same time. All of those linked. Then it had a line that said, please send to all 3 mailboxes at the same time to ensure delivery. Okay, fine. Then it said phone. And it had a linked number. Then it had fax and a linked number. Then it said website, and they clearly spelled out their entire address as a link. Then they had a political opinion at the bottom with a link to a YouTube video. Can anybody say wow?
Wow.
Yes. So, to me, this, you want to fix your email, you do this. You get rid of all of that garbage. You put your phone number down there if you really want to put your phone. Oh, I forgot. They also had their mailing address, their physical address, and their home address. Forgot about all of that. You put your phone and your fax in there if you want. And if you want to put your website, don't tell me that it's a website. If I don't know that HTTPS whatever is a website, I don't deserve to be on the internet. No political opinions, 14 different colors, and YouTube videos. Assume that the user is on their phone and that all of that is just going to bloat up their phone. I don't even accept images by default. I have all images in my mailbox turned off. So I don't even see that stuff. If you're going to put links, make them useful. I got an email the other day from somebody that she's got one link in her footer, and it says, if you want to book an appointment with me, click here. Perfect. I wasn't overloaded, so I didn't ignore half of her data. And she had one link. So if she needed to put 1 or 2 links into the body of the message, she still had plenty of room to play. But if you've got 15 in the footer, you try to put something in the body of the message, it's going to implode. And how many of us have it so that our signature gets applied to every message in the chain? You keep replying and you keep adding all of that content. Okay. Rabbit hole, but soapbox. Think about your end user. In the business world, I know somebody that they work in corporate America, and that their boss, every time she gets a new certificate off of whatever, she puts the logo, a link back to her profile, and a little blurb about when she did it in her signature. There are 27 certificate photos in her footer. The more you put in the footer, the less you can put in your message when it comes to links.
Sorry, so are you opposed to like clickable links for your phone number?
I won't say that I'm opposed to it. I'm saying seriously be careful about the excess that we add to it. A phone number link, absolutely. But how many people need a clickable fax link in their email? How many people need a clickable phone, cell, fax, and office link in the email? It's about the end user. They're going to get halfway through the first paragraph. They're not going to read the 7 paragraphs you typed. So they're definitely not going to read the 42 lines of signature line. So just think about the end user. Think about the fact that they're probably on their phone. If I get an email from somebody that says iPhone, I typos, I apologize, I delete. And just laugh and wonder why they think that that's professional. With Google, if you use the Gmail app, you can set up a nice signature on the website and use the same signature on your phone without having to recreate it. Make your life easier. So I might have talked a little longer than you wanted me to, Doug, but I can take questions. I can demo stuff. I can show stuff.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
I had a client that sent me an email a couple of weeks ago, and they said, did somebody hack my computer? And of course, there was a Bitcoin amount of money that they wanted and stuff like that. You know, the email, and that it should normally have gone into junk, but it didn't, because it came to their email address from their email address. And I looked at it and I went like, well, I don't think you have, and I don't know if I fixed it, but I did put a Dkim record on it. But would the Dkim record have fixed that, or is that a Dmarc thing?
Dmarc.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And bear with me. I'm going to take something off my screen and pull something up so that I can trim out any client stuff. And then I'll throw it back on the screen. What I'm looking for is I'm pulling up URI ports so that I can pull up specifically my domain. Okay. Yes, see, there's Alicia with a win. Linktree, please simplify things. Make your life easier for end user for any data that you want to provide them. Because the end user, they are easily distracted. So here is URI ports. And what it's saying is it's telling me, okay, I've got reports that came in for this domain, 2 different ones that came in today. So right here, when I look at this one that's pass, it just shows Dmarc passed, everything passed. And these are reports that are coming from Google. And that my policy is a strict alignment, full reject, 100% enforcement. Great. I don't usually look too hard at those. I look at the ones that show failures. And this fail, I'm not surprised by this. Because, and let me make this a little bit bigger for everybody. This one was sent to a domain that's not configured with Dmarc, and then that had a forward in place. So it was forwarded to another domain. So it's showing that it was delivered to this domain, but there was an intermediary. So it shows that SPF failed because it was being sent from a different domain. But it still got delivered because DKIM was 100% valid. Here we go with Postmark. It shows that DKIM was valid, but SPF did not line up, which is fully expected. So when I look at this, it'll show that what policy I'm actually running against it. And it lets me do whatever I need. It lets me collect all my domains in here. I'm going to switch it over for a second. I'm going to look for a different domain because I've got one that I know has lots of failures on it. when it fails, it'll actually show you, oh, everything failed, DKIM, SPF, and because of that, Dmarc, and that it was rejected.
So
And I
Dmarc-
expect this one to go this way, because this domain sends no email. This was somebody in China trying to spoof my domain. And Google said, nope, not going to happen. And just deleted all those messages.
So Derek, if you have a Dkim record that passes and an SPF record that fails, that will go through the Dmarc. Okay.
Correct.
So but obviously both fails there. Dmarc was not going to pass.
Yeah, both fail, and that's a definite rejection.
Right. And same thing applies if SPF is passing and the Dkim is failing.
It depends why the DKIM fails.
Okay.
If it fails because the signature is bad, then it does not get delivered.
Okay.
If it fails because of a missing signature, then it'll still get delivered.
Eric, one more thing. Have you used mail-tester.com for testing the emails that you send?
I have.
Is it a good service?
I've used quite a few. One that I used to use is what is the one? I used to use Mail Hardener. Yeah, there we go. I've used this one a few times for testing stuff. And there was another one that I used to use, but they got greedy and they took away all their free functions and replaced them with functions that were $1,200 a month. So I promptly forgot their domain name. I don't mind if somebody wants to charge a reasonable price, but for their free service, they could have still been a little kinder. I have used Mail Tester.
Yeah, I put that in the chat. So
yeah, I have used them. Quite a few that I've used. I've been very happy with Postmark. SendGrid worked good, except the AT&T domains. But I was very happy with Postmark. And that's what I've been using lately. And one of the things I like about Postmark is the Slack integration. If there's problems, if I get a bounce message, I get a notification at Slack about that bounce message. I don't have to wait the week for the notification from Postmark. I just get an instant notification. And so far, my cases of bounced messages have been people that don't know how to type their own email address, but you can't fix that. So I'm happy to leave my screen share and pop up anything anybody wants. But I want to thank everybody, Doug, and Doug, Mary Ann.
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, I know that this is a really great presentation, but I have limited time and I have things I know really well and I do really well.
Yes.
And other things I'd rather have somebody else who knows it really well do it.
Yes.
So let's say I wanted to implement this on my own email, and I currently have my email coming into Gmail, just a regular free Gmail account. So how much would you be able to, how much time would it take you to go in and kind of put the Dmarc in and handle this for me?
So actually that is a great question. And to that point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull something up. Because this is a question, and this is why I always tell people when you go to do Dmarc, this requires a lot of thought beforehand.
Right.
So take me just a second because I'm trying to figure out where this is. Because I know I've got the form. Okay, I'll just do it off my other site. when you're starting to set up Dmarc, what you've really got to start doing is you've got to start thinking about, there we go. You've got to start going through and thinking, oh, wow, I don't even have that form there. You've got to start thinking about all the different places that you send from. So if you're,
What if I only send from my-
you've got your Google Workspace, but
Right.
let's say that you're also sending from Mailchimp, and you're sending from your website.
Did you say workspace or just regular Gmail?
Well, now if it's regular Gmail,
I
you don't do anything.
I have regular
Google
Gmail.
Google does it for you.
Okay. Yeah, I have regular Gmail. It's free, so it's not workspace.
Yeah, no, then
But I
Google does
do
it for you, and you can't.
occasionally send emails from Mailchimp account.
Yeah, and if you're sending from Mailchimp,
Web, and then from my own, and I have my personal Gmail, email.
and
too.
if you're sending from Mailchimp or anything similar, one word of caution will be to never use a Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail, etc. address.
Right, I wouldn't. Yeah.
And if the service does not allow you to configure Dmarc for them, if the service does not support DKIM records, don't use them.
Right.
Now, most of the big guys out there fully support it. So I do highly recommend it. It does wonders. It gets rid of that thing that says on behalf of, or sent via Mailchimp or whatever. So I do recommend that. I hate double opt-in, but I use it on absolutely every marketing email I do. If you want to sign up for my newsletter, there's a double opt-in. But that's not really for reputation. That's more for spam and protecting people from protecting me from having to pay for people that don't need to be on my list.
So it would take you what, an hour to set something like this up for I'm not talking about a corporation with dozens of emails, but a small business.
It doesn't matter how many addresses you have. The bigger piece is how many sending locations you have.
Okay.
And then it also is based on not just how many sending locations you have, but what are they?
Okay.
If it's Mailchimp, Mailchimp always uses those records right there.
Okay.
They're going to be exactly the same for every single Mailchimp setup. So those are no brainers. There they are. But
Right.
You're using Constant Contact. They generate a custom one for every account.
Got it. Okay.
Or Postmark or SendGrid or and then if you were to look at Microsoft, a lot of times on Microsoft, you actually have to go into PowerShell and run scripting through PowerShell to create the keys. So it kind of varies depending upon where the locations are as to how long it would take to set up.
Yeah, that we looked into there. I was looking for older pictures like Quinelli. Eric, I've got a question.
Yeah.
So we happen to be on SendGrid and use HostGator for our hosting service. If you move to another server, then do you get off blacklists automatically?
When your IP address changes,
yeah.
If your IP is the piece that was on the naughty list, then yes, that will automatically resolve itself. If it's your domain that's on the naughty list, then no. Moving host does not make any difference.
Yeah, no. As I understand, it's because we're on the shared service, and
right.
I've used the MX tool and I've gone all through it, and then I've had a lot of back and forth with SendGrid and
yes.
About getting the IP cleared and stuff. And
well, and if it's a SendGrid IP address, and you're on the free plan, this is the reason why I am no longer using SendGrid.
Yeah.
Because they basically said, oh, well, if you want us to fix that problem, give us enough money monthly that you get a dedicated IP from us.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the same story. Yeah. It's not, we have a, it's a monthly fee, but yeah, it's like the shared IP plan. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was not a fan of, well, we really don't care about our customers except the ones that are paying us lots and lots of money.
Right.
Because to me, every customer is valuable. Because even that customer that calls you once a year for, and gives you $10 is probably telling their friends, I'm a small fish customer, but look how well he treats me. So every customer is valuable, and SendGrid doesn't seem to go that route.
No. But by the way, it is a lot of other domains besides AT&T.
I know. I know AT&T was just the big one that was kicking my butt.
Yeah.
No, Amy, Mailchimp does not automatically set up DKIM. You have to do it yourself. It's under the domains section where you set up verification and authentication. And I forget which order is which. The first one, they send you an email and you say, yeah, I actually got the email. The next one is, are your records entered in DNS?
Wow, this was really good.
I'm sorry, could you say again where Mailchimp does it?
In Mailchimp, left-hand panel, there's a spot that says domains.
Okay.
And once you go under domains, then sorry, no, it's not domains. I believe they renamed it to website.
Okay.
And under website is a link called domains. Half the time I can't find it, so I ask the Google gods and they give me a direct link.
Okay.
Because they've moved it a few times.
And then you request to do it?
No, actually, what happens is when you go in, it's pretty straightforward. You can click on it and it just says verify, and they'll send you an email. And then once that's been verified, then they give you the option to authenticate, which is where they prompt you to enter these CNAME records. And actually, the only two that they're prompting for currently are K2 and K3. But from experience, this Mandrill one is still in use for the sign-up emails. So if you don't have this one in place, the sign-up emails don't get delivered half the time. So the double opt-in doesn't end up working.
Oh, thank you. That solved another problem I've been having. So how do I set up the Mandrill thing? The same way?
Yeah. Yeah, you create these 4 records, and you know what? I will let me pull this one piece out so that they're usable for you. And I'll just paste these into the chat window.
Because I think when I signed up, I had to put something in my CNAME record on the domain, but that would be different.
It's possible. It's possible. K1 is the one that they used to use. They added K2 and K3 sometime last year. They have not made a switch over, but I by default just add all 4 of these records because it has been a little more reliable.
Got it. Thank you.
And I know I put my email address in the window early on. I will put it up there again. If somebody has questions, feel free to shoot me a message. For anybody that hasn't seen me floating around the world, I'm not hard to find. I'm on events everywhere.
Yes, you are.
I may have a couple coming up.
I just want to say that Eric has come highly recommended by someone who is not a member of this meetup group, who strongly recommended it for another client that he's helped. And so, you know, I think that most of us can go through this and review the video that's going to be put up online and be able to probably duplicate this. But if it's like, no, I don't want to, I mean, he's really somebody you could work with. So
yeah, I mean, if there's something if I can point somebody in the right direction, feel free to send me an email. If somebody asks me, I will never give anybody a hard sell. You know what? No. I will tell you though, Dmarc is everybody's friend. The more people that use Dmarc, the less spam we're going to get. And that's part of the reason why I want to do this presentation for people, is because Dmarc, every time one of you guys sets up Dmarc for your client or for yourself or for your family member, I'm going to get less spam in my mailbox.
Yeah.
My parents are going to get less spam in their mailbox.
And this is the kind of thing that every time you hear it, you learn, you know, every time we go over it, we learn more and learn it more solidly, because this stuff is complicated.
Yeah, Dmarc is not a just jump into it on the first day, go full reject, full enforcement type of thing. Take the steps, start it at report only, make your way through quarantine, reject, and monitor it. I mean, you need to monitor it forever. I mean, unless you're just, I'm only sending from Google, I'm never sending it from anywhere else. Okay, fine. But if you're going to change anything along the way, make sure you're monitoring it, because otherwise you change something and you don't realize, oh, I switched from Constant Contact to Aweber, and now my emails aren't getting delivered.
Yeah.
That will make anybody's day unhappy.
Well, I thank you for the URI ports, because I've been sending them to Postmark app, and they don't really tell you a whole lot unless you pay them.
Yeah. I tried monitoring through the Postmark thing. That was one piece I didn't like of theirs. It just seemed, I mean, it seemed kind of like upsizing a Happy Meal. Yeah, you could do it, but what does it get me? And URI ports, I've been using that for a couple of years now. And I think I just renewed my for my second time, so I guess I'm on year number 3 of it. And
well, the reports
great.
looked good. The reports looked good.
Yeah, it's great. It's easy to add a domain name. You can customize your subdomain. If you really want to get into it and start doing a lot of fun stuff with it, you can actually I use Cloudflare, and I'm doing Wildcard Records for DNS. I'll reshare my screen here in a second when I find it. But what I'm using, here we go. What I'm using is, I'm actually using a Wildcard DNS record, Wildcard Dmarc record. Where did it go? For that matter, it might even be on the next page. There it is. I got a Wildcard Dmarc record that allows me to collect Dmarc reports from any domain. So when I set up my Dmarc, my actual Dmarc record, instead of using that URI ports address, I've actually got it set up to use my email address. Just a group, a Google group. so that if I need to update all of my domains to point to something else, I just have to update that Google group, and all 30, 40, whatever domains I've got automatically start sending to the new location.
So
Or
how
I
do-
can do split delivery and send them to multiple locations.
So what sends it to your IR ports?
My Google group.
Oh, I see. So that email that they give you, you put that in your group.
Yeah, I put that into my Google group, as the sole member of the group, so that all the reports come into the group, and then just get delivered to URI ports. And then it also allows me to save those reports to make, if I need to physically look at them, import them into something else. And I can do split delivery this way, where I can send them to Postmark and to URI ports at the same time.
Cool.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
It's actually live answer because I think someone is informed here. So I'm part of an organization and we've sent some emails out and they've been spammy and we're on active campaign. And just now I was in Slack and I said about we had sent emails out with a lot of links, with all the information. Let's go to all our different Discord channels and all these different pages on the websites. It was just like a full, right? And so I got back from this person. If an email has been successfully delivered to an address, the domain is usually whitelisted. If it's a new email, there are countless reasons it would go to spam, multiple links being just one. And he wrote back, this is where I think it might, we can clarify this. He wrote, because the server we rely on, this is what I said, we had gotten some spammy stuff. And his response was, the server we rely on, I believe, is with Active Campaign. It's less to do with our content, it is to the actual health of the server delivering the emails. Now I thought, is Active Campaign our server for delivering the emails? I'm confused.
So if you're sending an Active Campaign mail blast,
Yeah,
then Active Campaign is your outbound server.
okay,
And depending upon which plan you're on, and I don't know the Active Campaign plans offhand, depending upon which plan you're on,
Basic.
you may have a shared IP, you may have a dedicated IP.
okay, we have shared, I think, because we're on Facebook.
And Active Campaign, I believe all of their plans are paid plans. So they're less likely to have spammy IP addresses.
Okay,
But it is a shared IP address. So you've got 1,000 other vendors sending emails.
got it.
And so the IP can get flagged, just like SendGrid.
Okay,
The content plays a part in it. The IP address plays a part. The domain name plays a part. And this authentication, the Dmarc piece plays a part.
okay, got it.
They all work together.
Okay, so it's the IP, the shared, the Dmarc, and the content, all of it, like he was saying.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. You can't blame it on any single piece.
Yeah,
Well, generally, we can't blame it on any single piece. If we're doing our best with the email we're sending, then it's a combination.
okay,
Obviously, that person that bought a list of 10,000 users and just added them to Mailchimp and wondered why they got their account deleted. They got what they got. But the rest of us, it's a combined thing.
so it's why MailChimps are often in the spam box then.
No, the biggest reason why Mailchimp is usually in the spam box is because people are sending it using Yahoo addresses, Gmail addresses, Hotmail, instead of using their own domain and authenticating. Because Mailchimp being free, you get a lot of people that have no budget.
Got it. Yeah, that's
and
what I thought.
they're not even willing to spend the $10 a year for a domain name.
Can I ask a question too? Is there anything we can do at Active Campaign, even on the basic? Is it a lot of?
Yeah, you could do authentication and Dmarc. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
So any mail service that does not support DKIM is, well, I'll share my opinion. It's garbage. If you've never heard of a company called My Emma, I called them a couple of years ago and said, hey, do you support DKIM? They said, we don't understand it, so we'll never support it.
Oh my God.
And I said, thank you very much. And I told my client, you can use them, but your emails are going to go to spam.
Wow.
I mean, Mailchimp, Constant Contact. I mean, both of those are garbage, but even they support DKIM.
Oh yeah. ConvertKit has that free thing too.
So wait, who do you use then, Eric?
Mailchimp, because
That's what I thought you said. And then you said
I'm on Active Campaign, and I actually moved someone from Mailchimp because I spent 90 minutes and he spent an additional 4 trying to make an automation work. And when we moved to Active Campaign, he worked so laboriously through the Mailchimp thing that before I could jump in to help him, he had the automation set up at Active Campaign within 15 minutes, and we just wrapped it up in another 10 when I joined him.
Yeah, I mean, for my needs, Mailchimp has worked. I mean, I'm on the free plan because I still fall under the number of users, because I don't send out a lot of emails. I don't send out a lot of emails. So I fall under the limits, so it still works for me. I'm really using it to deliver blog posts to people's mailboxes.
Oh no.
And the automation works for that. So I don't even have to log into Mailchimp ever. So it works. When I get to the point that I run afoul of their free plan, I'm going to Active Campaign.
So Active Campaign you like better than Sendinblue or anything like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, if I'm gonna pay for a service, Active Campaign is the only marketing service I'd be willing to pay for at this point.
It's excellent, and I thought that ConvertKit was going to give it a run for its money. So ConvertKit is really good, but it has like that 1,000 free emails, and so then I went to go do an automation, and I could only do a 1-step, and in order for me to do multiple step automations, then it would bump up to $29 a month. And I can do the same with about 12, I think it's $9 or $12 a month on Active Campaign with the basic. They just don't have a free account. And I realized that the other ones recoup the cost of the free account in many ways. And so that's how ConvertKit was recouping the cost, by charging people an arm and a leg. And then I think they're also selling your information on the free accounts of anything. Wix, Squarespace, whatever. So just getting those free accounts is actually not a benefit. It's just not.
Mailchimp isn't selling your email addresses that you're using for other people, is it?
No, it's not your email. It's like there's data that they get on you and stuff, because I'm not sure.
They're selling your information, not your client's information.
Yeah, you as a person who signed up. Oh, that would be awful.
Yeah, I don't think they do that more than once before they went out of business.
Okay, so I just got back from said, for what it's worth, I've never found configuring Dmarc having any impact on deliverability. However, it has to be done according to every ESP. I would have thought whoever set up AC at the start would have done that. Have you checked? But no, we didn't do that.
And you know where to find me. You can always shoot me an email if you need to look at it.
Oh, I should send him the copy of that that article that you said the Fortune 500 companies only was that the Dmarc or the Dmarc? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so here's, I mean, again, I've got an opinion. Anybody that says that Dmarc is useless is an idiot. And you should take away their email box, because they're causing spam. If they're not going to secure their mailbox, they're causing spam in your mailbox.
Well, he was wondering why it was not set up at the.
Right. No, and I mean, I'm not picking on anybody in particular.
Okay.
I'm just saying anybody that says Dmarc is a waste,
Mhm.
is the same person that says my nephew grew up with computers. They can build me a website. Oh, Mary Ann's heard that story before.
I built many a second or third website for somebody whose child or girlfriend or ex-boyfriend built their website.
I do IT support where people call me up and say, well, yeah, my kid, my nephew, whatever, grew up with computers. They've been supporting my stuff. And I'm like, oh, and what boat are you in now? Why are you calling me?
Exactly.
So yeah. I hate to admit how long I've been in IT. So I'll just say it's long enough that I have seen some horror stories.
Well, this is a really
realize
great
that the kids that grew up with computers, they don't even know how to put paper in a printer.
This is a great presentation.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I do
really
try.
good.
I enjoy doing this. Doug, if you're okay, I'm going to throw Cambridge up in the window.
Throw them in there. Yep. Always good.
Cambridge is next Monday. I'm talking about Google Tag Manager.
Google what?
Google Tag
Yeah,
Manager.
that was cool.
Cambridge, England.
That time change, is that 8 hours?
Well, I
From the
posted it up Central Time, so it's noon Central
Okay.
Time.
Okay.
Oh, I have one more question. So the Dmarc is something I would have to configure at Active Campaign.
No. Active Campaign is going to give you your SPF settings that you need to add to your DNS provider.
Okay.
They're going to give you your DKIM record that has to be added to your DNS provider. And then Dmarc is that record that you create at your DNS provider that ties them together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you have to have your SPF and your Dkim before you do your Dmarc.
Okay,
Yes.
I need SPF from Active Campaign. Oops, shit. Sorry. So you would need SPF from Active Campaign and then set the Dmarc up at
Dkim next.
the what?
The
Dkim.
SPF, DKIM,
Okay. Oh my gosh.
and Active Campaign should give you that too.
And here's a link to their help article about getting all this stuff.
Okay, cool.
And the thing about Dmarc is you have to know where you're going to send the reports to.
Oh,
That's what the URI ports was.
okay, got it.
Or
You can
send it-
accept them yourself, but like I said, they are just XML files, so they're kind of ugly.
Would they do this, help you do this when they make that call that, whenever you sign up, they call you and help you set your stuff up? Probably
Hard
not.
to say.
Okay.
Hard to say because like I said, I'm still cheap and using Mailchimp because I've got too many accounts and I don't I think I've got 15 Mailchimp accounts.
So it's SPF from Active Campaign.
KIM,
And what's the other one?
DKIM
And then DKIM
from Active Campaign.
from Active Campaign.
Yep.
And then,
And actually, here's all that you need to add to your SPF record is this piece right here.
that's it?
Yeah. Yeah. So if
Then I'm done?
if you're running Google as your mail provider, your record would
not.
be this.
We're not, I don't think we're using the Google Workspace thing.
Yeah. So I mean, if you were running Google, it'd be
Okay.
Active Campaign plus Google. Otherwise, it'd just be you just need to add that include for the EMSD1.
All right, so,
And that'll be your SPF. Now DKIM, they're going to generate keys for you. That'll be text records that you'll have to enter.
Yeah. I use Rackspace for my email and they generate all that, for you. Dkim,
Oh.
Dmarc. So any proper email provider should be able to do that with no problem.
Yep.
Oh, well, we're on Fat Cow, and that's where the emails are coming
Well,
Hmm, that's not. That's not the email providers he was talking about.
No, it's not. It's not. And it's not the hosting that I was trying to get them to get away from, but they went to.
But they still may be, knowledge base records from Fat Cow that will tell you how to do that, because this is not, this stuff is pretty standard email stuff.
Okay.
So Fat Cow likely will have.
Yeah, and I mean, Dmarc's been around for, darn, it's got to be good 10 years.
Okay, so, and then that include.emsd1 goes where? What part of the DNS? Is that what you said?
Well, that'll be in your SPF record.
SPF record.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so in your name server, in your zone records, you'll have a zone record that says text, and the value, like he shows you there, V equals to SPF1, and then whatever your provider was, you just add that, include emsd1.com in addition to whatever else your SPF record shows. If you don't have an SPF record, then you create one, a text record, you set the value equal to SPF1, include emsd1.com ~all.
yeah. And they all are text records that you add.
Yeah, they're all text records.
Yeah, for Active Campaign, they'll all be text records. Sometimes your DKIM record will be a CNAME record. Sometimes your SPF record will be a CNAME record. If you're using something like SendGrid or Postmark, they'll be CNAME records.
Okay, and then there's that.
Really?
Yeah, they'll tell you, so.
Yeah, I mean, Mailchimp gives you all your DKIM and DKIM records via CNAME records. That way they control them, which is ideal, because that way if they need to upgrade the version from 1024 to 2048, or better yet 4096, then they can just do it and they don't have to get everybody else to go out and do it.
Yeah.
When there was a hack and they needed to rotate the keys, they were able to go in and change the 2 keys, and every client automatically had the update.
Oh, okay, cool.
But in the case of doing it as a text record, if there's a hack, everybody's got to go out and update their own records.
Uh-huh.
And that's why I rotate mine quarterly.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Mailgun has a CNAME and it has 2 text records.
Yeah, probably.
ConvertKit uses CNAME also.
Yeah, I mean, CNAMEs make it a lot easier. I bet for anybody on GridPaint, have you guys switched over to using CNAMEs for all of your hosting, do CNAME flattening instead of doing IP addresses for all your sites?
What? Say what?
Really? Okay. Hold on. Hold on.
Wild cards, that's all.
No. So I've just got I'm pointing to a CNAME record for my site and for the www. I'm just pointing to a CNAME record. So, and then I just manage if I need to move something, it's all over here. And if I need to move something, yeah, okay, fine. I just change what it's pointing to and do it all in one place. So that I can manage, when I upgrade from 18 to 20 or 22 or whatever, I can just drop the new server in here and update all of the stuff, my sites, client sites, everything, whether I've got their DNS or not.
Okay, I'll have to see that a couple more times before I'm ready for that. I kind of get what you're saying, but actually doing it will be a lot more complicated than just looking at it.
Yeah, well, then, let me show you another fun one.
Uh,
Oh, hold on. I gotta go into the workers.
this is the Eric continuing school of education.
Yeah. What kind of fun stuff can I come up with next?
Well, you've talked about that one before, but this time I get it a little better. So third time.
There we go.
Oh yeah.
MTASTS. Cloudflare worker. Serve up that file right up here. Doesn't make a difference. I don't have to have dedicated hosting.
Mm-hmm.
So it cost me nothing to do this. And then all that happens is I just set it up through. I set it up here where I just do just a dumb address, a bad address, and proxy it, and then the worker automatically grabs it and handles it.
I'm looking forward to the Eric DNS higher education class.
Yeah, we'll see what else I can come up with. I'm always looking for new stuff. See what else I can come up with.
Well, there's several classes right there in what you just showed us.
I know.
Yeah,
5 seconds.
I was like getting overwhelmed every minute that it went on, to be honest. Like none of that, like not that it's your fault. It's just that it's like, oh my God. I don't know.
Yeah. I do spend a lot of time just coming up with new ideas and
The cloud,
how to do something different.
the Cloudflare postgraduate course.
I'm pretty sure your mailbox will be full of people asking you to do this.
Oh, I'm hosting websites on GitHub now.
Yeah, I saw that. That's cool.
Hmm.
I'm hosting MTASTS records over at GitHub for subdomains, but I've also got an HTML site hosted over there, full HTML site with actually it's HTML with a working form. Yeah. So, I'm always looking for something new to do, and that's on the free GitHub. That's not even paid GitHub.
All right.
Okay.
Find a new idea.
Maybe something new to do and eat meals and sleep.
I'm always looking for a new idea. Yeah.